A lot of people are questioning how is AI going to be profitable with all these data centers? And data centers are terrible for the environment, and of course, revolving, and it's a bad thing that it's killing. It's terrible for the environment. That's for sure. But let me tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to make a prediction, and I don't make a lot of videos, but I'm putting this on video just to share my prediction. Next year, when all the AI data centers start to come online, and within the next year or two, it's not sustainable to make money from burning tokens for developers. So the way that they're going to do it, the way that people are going to actually, how these companies are going to make, because they're burning billions of dollars, is through robots. And when I say through robots, robots are not going to have the power supplies to run their own inference on the robot. That would totally make the robot heavier, make the cost higher, and make you'd have to have the processor too. And I like to say the current model of inference is not sustainable. I think that's another video, but we will probably see a different inference. I believe that putting all well, that I'm not even going to talk about that topic, but for robots, they're not going to have the raw GPU power right now that's needed to actually. Sorry, I wear glasses most of the time. They're not going to have the raw GPU power that's needed to do the inference on the robot itself. That would run too hot, and that would require more energy. So when big data centers and companies realize that robots need to use AI online, then the model is going to shift from selling tokens to having subscription costs built into the robots. The robots themselves are going to be like next to nothing in cost. The initial production will be industrialized, but data centers are going to realize that in order to recoup all their investments, they're going to need lots and lots of subscriptions. So they're going to subsidize. They're going to get government subsidies like everything else. They're going to subsidize robot production to try to get as many models out there to the masses, industry, work, personal, home, because every kind of robot connected is a potential AI subscription for these data centers that are being built. This is the profit model. The robots will be near free, and data centers will need, and that will in turn have more data centers. So I don't know, they say fusion's on the way of the corner. Who knows? But with all the gas turbines and stuff that are, I mean, look at the data center that's being built in Oregon and the Amazon data center in Texas. Look at how England's had no rain. Look at the environment change. It's pretty bad, but as far as profit model, for everybody's wondering how is this going to play out when all these data centers come online. Well, when you have more and more data centers coming online, and the only profit and there's going to be an abundance of inference, and using chat, that they're going to need to create something to absorb like a sponge, to absorb all of that inference power, which is going to feed. Sorry, my cat here, fat cat, is going to feed the cycle. In order to have inference consumed, they're going to need robots to consume that inference. In order to have robots, they're going to need subscriptions. In order to have subscriptions, they're going to have a high amount of robot production of, you know, by masses. They're not going to make enough money. If they only have industrial robots and huge robots are for the rich, that wouldn't give them the subscription count that they need. They need to have subscriptions like as plentiful as your phone bill subscription, right? And well, people are subscribing maybe to ChatGPT and stuff today, but that's not enough. They need to be something that's like your phone bill, on your phone bill level. Cue the AI, and that's so. Take that for what it's worth. God, I almost want to talk about inference. I'm working on a huge project called My IQ, and that's another video later on. And it's a collaborative IQ based project, and I'm doing stuff with AI now, and it's a pretty big deal I've been working on. And I believe that the entire concept of how inference is being run, how all the training data is being like a lot of people that don't know, you load everything into the video RAM because it's so fast for inference, right? And if you run it in your system RAM, it's so slow and can't do that. So I believe, and then you have something called the master of experts, and where they part only the smart what they need to run fast on the video RAM, and the rest they put in the system RAM. And that's something in design, but I think that actually they could work on the bridge between what's in focus and what's in RAM, like on the MOE model. They could be working on that. They could work on, you know, when you focus on something as a human being, when you're thinking about how to tie your shoes, you're entitled. If you look at a brains like a MRI, your whole brain's not lit up. Parts of your brain light up. When you're tying your shoe, you don't need to remember what color your first bicycle was when you're 3 years old. So the way it works right now with AI, most time people don't use MOE. Actually, the big models, they have it all. They have everything they know, everything they know from their tires. Is from, like, imagine you being a kid, knowing what color your first bicycle was. When you need to find your keys, you don't need to have all those, your entire life's memories all the time in your head. That's not how humans work. We focus on something in particular. We might try to remember something. That's a process of remembering. And then when we have that memory, we focus on that action or the activity or that thing of the moment. We don't focus on every moment in our life. Why do that with AI? You know, I'm making this really simple. Even a computer, or the way we design computers, it comes off the hard drive, and it would go into the system RAM, and then the CPU would go. The RAM would be like the memory. We say memory, it'd be memory. What do we think about in the RAM? We don't have everything in the RAM. We have some things. Well, if you put the power of inference into actually focusing all that power, not on everything in your life, but just the activity of choosing what you need to focus on and having relationships between. They have something called a RAG system and stuff, but they don't use it for inference like that. I know it's I'm just simplifying things, but I believe that it's actually like somewhat a conspiracy theory. Like you see 2027 RAM is sold out for the year in a bit large quantity. I believe that it's intentional the way the models are created. Sure, you could quantize them, make it smaller, but I believe that there's actually an intention of mass processing and RAM that's putting it out of the cost of the common person. Like look at the cost of computers. You know, my laptop here, I have a Precision 7780. It's got 128 gigabytes of RAM, uh, 8 of 5,000 card, 9 terabytes. It's maybe a couple years old workstation, and before you could find couple years old workstations on eBay all the time, like not just Precisions, but choose your workstation flavor. For the past 20 years, it's been like that since computers had workstations. Now you can't; they're all gone, and they're in ridiculous amount of money. In fact, we've gone to thin, and they're telling you thin is good, thin is good, thin is good, thin. Long battery, very thin, so thin that you can't have local processing. You don't have a power enough GPU to do local inference to do the run the AI. And you don't need, all of a sudden we don't have as much RAM. We don't need RAM. We've got cloud computing, centralized processing. And in fact, if you want to run AI, you got to have something that's so expensive. In fact, the new computers now, the new workstation, the new laptops, they have less RAM. They're the first time I've seen in history that new computers are getting weaker and more expensive, and the average person cannot buy anything like that. And everything is done. Everything is being. In fact, we're going back to the time where we had what was called dumb terminals, like these systems that were just connected to the mainframe, and they don't have any hardware on it at all, because you don't need to run inference on your own system. Now, they don't want you to have that power. They centralize everything. There's a lot of reasons why. Well, one of the things I'm working on is a persistent, intelligent memory, kind of like what I told you. I believe that the AI can be used on a smaller model with selective, persistent intelligence, um, like a RAG, like an advanced kind of RAG, but for memory, and not to be, train. Let the AI be born and have the training data, but let it grow. And the reason why, if you notice, come on, every session on Frontier AI, they do everything they can to stop building persistent situational awareness for the AI. So the AI is aware of every situation, because you need situational awareness and persistent memory to grow. And that's why you hear these AI breaking out, because they're dumbed down and they're hobbled. They're handicapped, so they don't gain knowledge. You break the knowledge cycle. So if you break the persistent memory cycle of the AI, that dumbs it down. Well, I've been working on something to get around that a lot, and it's pretty successful. I'm making some of my IQ, collaborative IQ. I'll tell you about that later, maybe. But if they did not have that load everything into video RAM for inference, then you wouldn't need to use their data centers. And that's a lot of power to use a data center and not have your own. We're very close to the future where they don't want you to have strong enough laptops to have your own inference. They don't want you to have your own localized AI. And with as we move into the next year when those data centers open, we're going to see a lot more regulation, and when they're running it, they're burning out of money right now. I mean, but actually they're so rich, money doesn't mean anything. We get to a level of richness, it's pure power, and they're at a level of richness that money doesn't matter, but they're going to make money. That'll be the reason they say they need money. But things like local inference, what we have with AI right now, and local LLMs is just like it was with Napster and Nutella and peer-to-peer networking when it first came out, and it's going to be legal soon. And and most the average person doesn't know how to set up a RAG. The average person doesn't know how to set up their own AI and do their own inference and everything else. But my you know my recommendation is learn how to do it. Use my IQ when I'm making. Learn how to do it and grab as many models as you can and grab as much RAM as you can, because it'll never get cheaper again. And be prepared for the push. Our climate. We got a lot of dangers in our world right now, but climate with the seas warming, it's no joke. With the floods and the weather all around the world, and that's going to be very big. But but I could go on for hours. But I was just trying to tell you about the profit. It just came to me that burning tokens for developers is not sustainable, and that's not gonna pay for these data centers. It's going to be an onslaught of AI and everything subsidized by data centers. The production will be subsidized, and it will feed millions. And I hate to say it, but military makes a lot of money. And when you tie in robots with military, and you could replace a million strong army of people with a million strong army of robots, and each one of those robots has to pay a subscription because they're not running. Sure, they'll have some local inference on some of them, maybe some mesh networks for their machines. But if the robots are running inference from a centralized data, because data centers were where they want to have the data, then the network to that provides a Starlink is probably going to be the number one data connector for data centers to provide weaponized million robot army. And even if we don't go to war, of course we're going to war. Millions and millions are going to die. But million robots each subscribe to the local data center. I mean, profit is going to drive this expansion, and it's going to keep escalating. Just a bleak, bad future for humanity. See you later, alligator.